This process is hopefully something that together we're going to generate, we're going to become a kind of mind. And our mind, this mind that we will become, will explore a question together. And then when the conversation ends, that mind disbands like a bubble, arising to the surface of water and then popping it down again. And then people can dip in and participate in that mind and that exploration that we created as a whole piece, and thereby becoming this sort of like multiple iterations of that mind as it sort of lives on in the mind of others who participate. So because of that, I'm not going to go through and edit or structure or change the order of how things were spoken about, because by doing so, I would sort of like turn this living body of a thing into a sort of body worlds exhibit, which is very cool, but it's not the living body of the thing. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adventures Through the Mind, a podcast that explores topics relevant and related to psychedelic culture and medicine, always with the underlying question of how can we work with and through our psychedelic experiences to become better people, not just for ourselves, but for all those with whom we are nested in relationship, presently and across time, human and non-human alike. Today's episode is another addition to the Psychedelic Café series here at Adventures Through the Mind. And I'm going to start right off by reading right from my pseudo script, partially ad-libbed, but you can read along at jameswjessup.com. This one will also serve as the overture. So here we go. Today, we feature another addition to the Psychedelic Café series. This time exploring what art means and what the meaning of art might become in a growing era of AI-generated art-like images flooding the mindspace of humanity through the avenues of consumptive digital media. The Psychedelic Café is a curated collection of participants who, through a structured series of rounds, explore together a single question. The single question for this cafe is, what does the meaning of art look like in an era of increasingly accessible AI art generators with increasingly powerful capacities for fidelity and complexity? The guests we have joining us for this cafe are Skye, Simon Haiduk, Evan Bartholomew, also known as Bluetech, Martina Hoffman, Chor Boogie, Dan Santos, and Michael Phillip. Now, each of those guests introduce themselves in their short bio and how that is that they got on this cafe, on this call at the beginning of the cafe. So I'll leave that for then. Also, given the topic of this episode, AI art, AI in general, and its impact on humanity, and somewhat with a transgressive attitude, I actually asked ChatGPT, which is a kind of AI, conversational AI, I asked it to write me something to open this podcast. I used the prompt, quote, write me a 250-word script for the introduction of a podcast featuring a group of professional visionary artists having a discussion on the pros and cons of AI art generators for the future of art. And what follows is what ChatGPT gave me. In today's episode, should I do this in a robot? I'm going to do this in a robot voice.
In today's episode, we have a panel of experts who have been at the forefront of exploring the possibilities and limitations of AI in art. They'll be sharing their thoughts on how AI is shaping the art world and what it means for the future of creativity. We live in a world where technology is advancing at a rapid pace, and art is no exception. AI art generators are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and some argue that they have the potential to revolutionize the way we create and consume art. But with this new technology also comes a lot of questions. Is AI capable of creating truly original and meaningful art, or is it just a tool for generating endless variations of pre-existing styles? Our panel of experts will be diving into these questions and more, sharing their own experiences with AI art generators and offering their unique perspectives on the future of the art world. They'll be discussing the pros and cons of using AI in art and exploring how it can be used in a way that enhances rather than replaces human creativity. So sit back, relax, and join us for an enlightening and thought-provoking discussion on the future of art and AI.
So oddly accurate, yet also very AI positive, balanced in what the robots wrote for the introduction of this episode. For example, their final point about exploring how it can be used in a way that enhances rather than replaces human creativity. That is a part of the discussion, but so is, as I wrote down here, the atrophy of human creativity amid an infinite pool of AI content on the ready to consume at any time. Other topics we cover in this episode include how AI art generators work, why they don't actually copy anything from an image, and a spiritual way to work with AI as a kind of art ceremony. We also talk about the spiritual harm of AI art generation, the legal and ethical questions around AI use of artists' work without consent, questioning, is AI art actually art? And how a flood of AI art generators might culturally downgrade the monetary value of actual art. Finally, we explore AI meeting our cultural compulsion to consume rather than truly create. The question that if art alters consciousness, what quality of consciousness is AI art cultivating in us? We explore losing our connection to nature and our humanity in favor of a transhumanist fallacy, and AI art generators as a new archetypal container for reality, the birth of a new God, as well as other topics. Finally, also somewhat, intentionally transgressive, I made the art, if perhaps it's actually just an image, I'll leave that up to you, for this episode in Midjourney, combining a number of different Midjourney images that I prompted out into Photoshop to create an image that was specific to what I was looking for. And there are two reasons that I am telling you this. One, you'll learn about it halfway through the episode, or you might infer it. And two, I was really proud of it. I'm not much of a visual artist, so I felt really proud of what I created, even though Midjourney had a significant role in the actual images that I was working with. So that's all that for this episode. Big thank you to my patrons on Patreon, especially the people whose names are listed on the screen here on YouTube or in the description of this episode, as they give significantly. Without the voluntary contribution of financial energy and resource through Patreon, I would not be able to continue making the show and dedicating my full-time hours to producing not only the content, but the larger body of work that informs this content as well. So big thank you to my patrons. If you are not yet a patron and you're finding value in this show, please do reciprocate that value in some form of financial contribution, either by becoming a patron at patreon.com/James W. Gesso, leaving a one-time donation, or purchasing something from the online shop. Links to do so are in the description to this episode, wherever you're checking it out. And here is Psychedelic Café number 11, The Future of Visionary Art in an Era of AI. Enjoy. Okay, welcome everyone to this session of the Psychedelic Café. I will present the question in a moment, but first we'll go through and each person participating today will share their name and a short 3 to 5 sentence bio that is relevant to why you're here on this call today. And I'll start with myself, and then we'll go in the order of Dan, Chor, Autumn, Skye, Evan, Simon, and Michael. So myself, I'm James Gesso. I'm the host of this podcast, and I have been attempting to stay on board and up to date with sort of the various discussions that are happening in the psychedelic scene. And recently, it seems like there's a great popularity to AI art in the psychedelic scene, especially a lot of people using AI selfies and etc. And out of that, a discussion has emerged that seems to be quite complex and interesting, and sometimes quite polarizing, and other times quite toxic. So I'm here today to hopefully hold a discussion space that is more generative than I've seen thus far. Dan, take it away.
Thanks, James. I'm Santos. I'm primarily a science fiction and fantasy illustrator. I work in a lot of different fields, but I'd say my bread and butter is book covers. I also do a little bit of comic work, a little bit of film work, a little bit of video game work. So the AI conversation has been pretty forefront for a lot of the industries that I work in. And like you said, all kind of a little anti-AI, very aggressive about it because it feels like a threat to a lot of these industries. Aside from art, I run a website called Muddy Colors, which is a large nonprofit website geared towards free art education.
All right. My name is Chor Boogie. I am an artist. I'm an aerosol artist. I've been involved with aerosol art for the past 30 years. And I'm also traditionally trained iboga provider through the Bluetech tradition. And yeah, that's me. That's what I do.
I'm Autumn Skye. I'm a painter, and I just love the creative process. I love to explore it in my own work and intuitively. And I also teach and share that creative process and creative empowerment with as many people as possible, really aiming to liberate creative blocks and old stories of limited beliefs. It's my passion and focus, just to make art and share inspiration with the world.
I'm after Autumn, right?
Yep.
My name is Evan Bartholomew. I've been working self-employed as a professional artist for about 24 years now, across a variety of mediums: illustration, animation, 3D modeling and design, and most notably music has been the one that's kind of taken off and been my bread and butter. I am definitely a proud user of AI in my concepting and rendering pipeline of the work that I'm doing. And I'm very interested to engage in this conversation with everyone about the implications of this technology.
Hey, my name is Simon Haiduk, and I have been making art most of my life. I'm 41 now, starting with a lot of traditional mediums with art and music, various instruments. And for the past around 15 years, I've been primarily working in digital. So I'm a fan of technology and exploring it. I've only dabbled with AI a little bit, and I'm curious and concerned. So yeah, primarily also working with visionary art, psychedelic themes, metaphysical and nature oriented.
I am Michael Phillip. I host the Third Eye Drops podcast and media vessel. I suppose it's becoming other things, but I speak with a lot of brilliant, wonderful, whimsical, wise, interdisciplinary folks, several of whom are on this call, actually. But I've had some pretty deep conversations recently with artists like Android Jones and other friends of mine like Colin Frangisetto, both on the air and off, about all of the implications of this technology. And I have a lot of thoughts of my own as well. So happy to riff with you all.
Okay, so now we're going to open directly into the structured conversation. We're going to go through a round now for round one. Each person's going to share one clear, ideally coherent idea on the question, which I'll present in a second. And we'll go in the same order that we did our introductions, with myself finishing up. Actually, pardon me, we have Martina Hoffman joining the room. So we'll... Perfect. This might be one of those things where I make a cut. I don't know if this will dissect the mind or not. But
right into the fire.
It has not even, the emergent phenomena hasn't even begun.
Hello, Martina. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry, I'm coming in late. There's been some power shortages here in this area. So it might last, it might not, but here I am.
Well, nice to see you, Martina.
Hi, nice to see everybody.
Fingers crossed you can stick around. We actually just finished doing our round where we introduced ourselves. If you could introduce yourself, your name, your 3 to 5 sentence bio.
Sure. So my name is Martina Hoffman. I'm a painter. Have been a painter all my life. Brushes, pigments, you name it. And my work, it falls into the realm of visionary art. And recognize a few faces here. Evan is there. Yeah. And I don't know what else to say. I don't know. Did you have lengthy introductions, or did you want me to?
I think that's fine. We can get in. Okay. We can get in from here. Did you you read the email with all the structure and such?
Absolutely, I did.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to get into the first round, as I mentioned just before Martina jumped in, where we'll each be sharing one clear idea or singular idea that we have on the question, which is, what does the meaning of art look like in an era of increasingly accessible AI art generators with increasingly powerful capacities for fidelity and complexity? So we will go through the same order we went through for the introductions, which is Dan, Chor, Autumn, Evan, Simon, Michael, and now Martina. And then I will be the last one to speak on this round so as to not seed any ideas into the group. So if you're not ready, we can pass and come down to you at the end, but otherwise take it away, Dan.
Oh man, that's a loaded question to start with too. I think I as far as how it's going to affect art specifically, I think it'll help us redefine a little bit. But my bigger question with AI, from everything I've seen in my industry, is about the ethical and legal aspects of this. And I don't know if that's truly as big of a concern as the spiritual aspects of it. If we should be using it, if it's actually better for us in our art, in our civilization. And mostly my concerns lately have just been, is this a healthy choice to pursue at all?
What is that question again?
The question is, what does the meaning of art look like in an era of increasingly accessible AI art generators with increasingly powerful capacities for fidelity and complexity?
I think when it comes to AI, that I think it's inevitable, because it's a wave of the future. So when it comes to a creative definitely has a creative process, but if there's going to be room for evolution or for things to evolve, then and this era that we live in is a technology or a technical era, then I think that it's inevitable, because we have to like leave the door open for new mediums, for new ways to create things. So I don't see the fuss about it, but the fuss about it is that you have disgruntled artists that are feeling that something is being taken away from them, especially when it comes to their creativity, and the creative process itself. So, we're only going to make it complex as we want to make it, instead of trying to embrace it. That's how I look at it. Since this has been coming out for a while now.
Well, I'm admittedly quite uneducated on AI. I haven't even looked at the interface or the venue for making it. Intuitively, I just am not interested. Personally, it's for me, the greatest gift and the greatest teacher in my life has been the raw creative process, the struggling, the patience, the hundreds and hundreds of hours. And to bypass that feels understandable, especially in this day and age when we want everything to be instant. We want faster internet, faster food, faster everything. And so I think we're developing sort of an innate impatience in our culture. And so I see the attraction to it. And I also, for people that have never experienced the process of making art, I think that I understand how captivating and enticing it would be to all of a sudden have this creative liberation of being able to form images out of nothing. That said, as a teacher, I have seen again and again and again the true fruit of the creative process when somebody even that has never painted or hasn't created art since being in their childhood is able to sit again and again in front of that canvas and work through their own stories, through their own internal voices of enoughness. And so I'm very cautious, and I'm a little sad around maybe the missed opportunity of the creative process for some people. And I also understand that it is inevitable. It's happening, whether we like it or not. It's a tidal wave. And so I think that how to ride that wave and also just choose our own path with it. I've found it actually, while watching it for the last number of months, develop and really just make these leaps and bounds. Like at first you could tell that it was AI art because the eyes were weird. And then just like a few weeks ago, the hands were still weird. There was like 6 fingers. And so you could see it, and it's getting better, like just at this lightning rapid pace. So that's also alarming, is that it's getting harder and harder to differentiate between traditional media. So seeing that is alarming, but it's just creating more art in the world. So I find I go back and forth. And while watching it over the last few months, I've actually felt more motivated to make art than ever. And even in my own internal world, as I'm painting, spending, 15 hours in a day, just like carving these worlds on the canvas. I just want to make art. And so there's been this sort of like simultaneous dread and sadness and grief balanced with this like fierce motivation and passion and grasping towards improving my skill, reaching new audiences, sharing, teaching, empowering, and growing as an artist. So I'm just curious for what the future holds. I have no idea, but I've seen sci-fi movies. So I don't necessarily believe that it'll go swimmingly, but I'm also open to being surprised.
I think it's important to make a distinction here. Hold on 1 second. Can I skip to the end? Somebody just knocked on my door. I'll jump in. Yep. I don't want to hold you guys up. Give me 1 second.
So I guess it's me. Should I just jump in?
Yeah, Simon, you're up.
Okay. So yeah, I feel like it's hard for me to separate AI art and the meaning of it from the bigger picture of AI technologies, and sort of looking at what it means to be human, like the distinction between what it means to be human and what AI means for the future of humanity in connection to this technology. But I do think that each person has their own unique path with any type of creative tool, any type of creation, and art specifically. And like Skye was saying, like your process, each individual's process for what they get out of it is where the meaning really comes from. And so I've enjoyed various kinds of artistic processes. Like I said, going from traditional mediums into digital, where when I discovered digital painting, I was like, oh, finally I can like make these layers of light in these things that I was finding near impossible through traditional mediums. And so I was able to use it as a language to describe specifically psychedelic experiences I was having. And then, being able to get that out onto something to show people, and then having people come see my art and say to me, oh, well, oh my God, like you're really showing something that I saw and I experienced that. So art is a language for deeper understanding of our human experience here. And we're sharing all these connections, and the visual language can mean so much more to us than, well, it fits in with anything, but it just reaches us on such a deep level. So I do think that these technologies are providing a way to expand our meaning of what it means to be human, but then also seeing what it's doing to describe like psychedelic visionary states is pretty extraordinary. I'm seeing some people produce things, generate whatever we want to say, that are kind of pretty next level for interdimensional realms that are very difficult to describe and to create with other traditional art mediums. So we're always exploring the meaning of everything. And I think though, for myself also, I've noticed the few times that I've dabbled with AI generation is I feel really weird after. And I've gone on, like the other day I went on a like little bender one evening. It was like, oh, cool, interesting. And it had this weird, like kind of addictive drug-like quality where it's like something new, something novel. And it made me feel something along the lines of like the hungry ghost mentality. Like we're constantly seeking novelty and something new and reaching for like, what's the new? Could it be better? Could it be newer? And I was sort of, that process was interesting. But then the next day I went on a bender of just charcoal on pencil for like hours. I actually microdosed and got like right into the process of just charcoal pencil on paper, just drawing, because I needed to like refresh myself. I'm like into my humanness. So yeah, there's a lot to explore with the meaning and the future of AI in general. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks.
Yeah, the thing that really strikes me about this question is that it's partially categorical in that we see the output of these AI algorithms and it looks like art. But categorically speaking, I think, to piggyback off Simon's point, what we're actually seeing is the emergence of something totally novel and Promethean. Like whatever we have now is not what we've had before, in that we are outsourcing the creative process. We are gaining this strange godlike ability to summon visual novelty ad infinitum, forever and ever and ever. And the implications of that are, I don't think it's even possible to fully grok what they are yet. I think we can look at certain other things like the ubiquity of music, the ubiquity of other things that used to be rare that are now have like no scarcity whatsoever. But I think even on top of all of that, there's something truly novel, truly mercurial, truly Promethean, to the point where I think, mythologically speaking, like this is the birth of a new god. Like this is the birth of something that there is no previous reference point for, that is now like a living, breathing archetype in this world that's going to be exercising a level of metamorphosis over the way that we coexist with technology, like forever. Like this is the growth of a new appendage, I think, off of the human organism. So I'll just stop there because it's going to start breaching the your desire for there to be one clean point there. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, there's so many great points made, and I recognize myself in many of you. Just to just right off the bat, I've not been attracted to use any of the image generating programs yet. However, I've played with the digital medium throughout my work and find it very interesting. I find even the potential of AI and these programs very promising and also interesting. Who knows where we're going with this? I guess one of my fundamental first points that I'm kind of that kind of rubbed me the wrong way would be the ethical aspects of how these images are being generated. So I'm talking about the machines or the algorithms being fed by millions of images that have been basically abducted, taken away, or just have been taken from the original artists without their consent. And this is where I'm having a real fundamental problem. So I think what we need to do in order to move forward with this whole new God, as you put it so interestingly, is the legal and the ethical basics. So I think what I'd like to see is a system where we as artists can decide whether our art should be fed into these machines, and if they are fed into these machines, that there is definitely some I don't know, maybe some remuneration, something that acknowledges the decades we have spent on developing these images, our style, everything that went in there. I'm with Autumn, where I feel, my process is really in being with the canvas, and by the process for me is really creating these textures that AI just kind of generates in seconds based on the energy that thousands of artists throughout the ages have, or tens of thousands or millions of artists throughout the ages. I don't know how to put a number on this, have really spent to create a very distinguished language, content. And I think that, once we have this in place, then we can run with it. And another thing that I'd like to see happening for me, to say this is a tool, it's a little simplistic to me, because it is not. For me, a tool would be a program that allows me to feed the system with textures or with choices and images that I select, and then based on that, I develop a structure and a system to work with. But this is not the case. We're basically plagiarizing artwork, and this is, for me, going against the basic laws of copyright. So now there's another aspect to this. We could say, why not give it all up and let the collective use all these images to explode the creative potential, and so we can move really fast and furious with this. But I think being creative does not mean that you copy and paste and overlay textures and then sort of decide that this is a real authentic creation, because it's not. For me, honestly, I don't feel that this is how creation should. This is not how the creative process should work. It is a creation of some sorts, but it's not a I guess there's something that is happening here that feeds into our hunger of consumption. We've become greedy with everything, and we've become greedy with the way we want to have our lives go faster and easier. And I think AI kind of works into this a little bit. And And I really feel that we should just really pay attention to how we can make these systems more more spiritually grounded too, because creation is a spiritual process, and the spiritual process is something that comes from within, and that is something that exists between the all and this little being that is trying to make sense of it. And I think that using a machine is just like binging on any other substance without limits. And so I don't know, I'm kind of, going on and on here, but I think that this is a good start to explain from where I'm coming from. So, yeah.
Evan?
Okay. So one thing I really want to make clear is that it is a little bit frustrating how much people don't understand the way this specific technology works. So I'm just going to speak from my own experience and how I use it, because it speaks to this particular question. And I believe that the meaning of art is incredibly personal, and every single person on the planet has their own definition and engagement with art. So, speaking specifically to the concerns that have been raised, my process using AI is a very personal and spiritual process. I am currently using it as a way to document my ceremony and dream work. So I'll have, if I'm doing a ceremony at night, I'm speaking to a specific guide or energy that I'm working with. I have my dreams. I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is sketch out the basic concept of the dream. And then I light my altars, I light incense, I begin a divination process. And my engagement with AI as a concepting tool is to me the closest analog to lucid dreaming incubation, where you're watching noise begin to diffuse into form. So every single step of the process that I do is done through divination and prayer, using specific numbers. Depending on my divination technique, I may be working with very specific energies and archetypes. And there's a misconception that people who use AI as part of their art tool are typing words into a box and getting an image. AI generators can make images, but they don't make art. Art is a personal thing that takes a personal human vision. So for me, I can generate elements of vision. I can generate elements of what I'm seeing in my head or this sketch that I've created. And it takes me 8 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours to realize a vision, thousands of generations of creating images until I can find the pieces to help express this vision or this particular communication that I've had through divination with a deity that I'm working with. So this assumption that there is no spiritual aspect or an actual artistic approach of blood, sweat, and tears and hand painting in light and shadow and constructing and building this vision to capture something that is deeply spiritual and deeply mystical for me is something that I find it really, really important to discuss. And the other thing, I want to speak to something Martina was saying. I personally am trading a number of professional artists, concept designers at Lucas and Disney, high fructose cover artists, because the AI tools absolutely allow you to input your own images to train a data set so that you can paint a bunch of stuff and build a model on your own particular style and explore an idea like, oh, I had this idea. What if it's a, macro photograph of this, particular entity with this particular type of texture? You can paint those textures, create those textures, build a model off of that, and use it as a tool to generate concepts and see what that would look like. So maybe you don't have, 10 weeks to paint all the different iterations of that color story or that texture of this form that you want to see, but you can train a model on your own personal and extremely particular vision, which is the mentoring work I'm doing with professional artists, is showing them how to make the tool, the image generator tool, a personal art assistant that can help them concept and be more productive in their work. So I know I covered a lot of stuff there. Just the main point I want to get across is just to address the assumption that if you're using AI in your art generation process, that you are only generating images, not creating art. Because for me personally, it is deeply personal, deeply spiritual, and I spend as many hours as anyone else does getting these pieces to where I need them to be to represent my personal vision and what I wanted to speak to with that particular piece that I'm working on. And I absolutely am not disvalidating any of the ethical concerns. There are still some misconceptions about how the data sets are trained. I'm totally on board for what the ethical way of working with people's content is. But it is very important for me to address this belief that what I do is not art and not personal and not spiritually meaningful, because I'm using this as a tool to create my visions.
So my input into this round is sort of slightly away from what was just spoken about, which is wondering about market consumption and the sort of perception of monetary value for goods, and wondering and being concerned about a trajectory wherein it seems like if something was made on a computer that is digital and is shared digitally on a computer that people then access digitally, there seems to be this sense that it's like should be cheap or should be free or shouldn't cost money, and questions around economy and how we operate as a market. That all aside, great criticisms there for sure. But my concern is seeing that although many of the people who will likely use AI art on social media for their selfies or for whatever are not likely to have ever paid an artist to do it, and might be just as likely to go onto Pinterest and screenshot and then post, there's still this real consideration about how the increasing ease of accessing tools through various AI art generating means, because I'm learning now there's also a confluence of or confusion of term. This is not just one thing that's happening, but the increase in that kind of access might deprioritize or decrease the monetary valuation of artistic and creative work by creative individuals whose career are in creative production. That's my single thought. So we're going to go another round again, same as before. Each person will get their opportunity to share one idea, and I'll encourage us to try to keep it contained to one idea. You can follow up on what you said before, or you could follow up on what somebody else had said, but try to keep it into that singular idea thing so that we can have lots of space for the open discussion which comes after this round. And so in the same order we went before, we'll go again. Dan, Chor, Autumn, we'll say Autumn, Simon, Michael, Martina, and then Evan. So, and you can pass if you would like to wait till the next.
I think first I'd like to address Evan's comment about it being art. I think it absolutely, AI art is art. I think anything, the moment you apply an intent and you say, this is complete, this is done, I like the way this looks, it's out the door. It doesn't matter if you spent 10 seconds on it or you spent 10 weeks on it. It's art. It's this Duchamp art mutt urinal thing. It doesn't matter if you found, the sun is beautiful, but it's not art until you say, I'm taking a photo of this, and then this is now art. So whatever Evan is using this for, I think it's valid, certainly. My real concern is the ethical aspects of it and the health aspects of it, just spiritually and mentally. That, like Martina was saying, I think we are a consumptive society, and we just will eat and eat and eat and eat and binge. And that there's this distinction between art and content. And right now, people just want content. We want media. I could see AI generating music on demand, or the next TV show on demand, where you could say, I want a comedy that's 10% horror and it's this actor. And it just spits out this thing for you. And people will eat it up endlessly, I'm convinced. And I think it's going to probably going to be like the equivalent of GMO food. We're going to make this stuff that looks like art, but doesn't have the substance of it. And it's going to be fine for most people. And we're just going to shove it down our throats until, we're nutritionally devoid or spiritually devoid of what the stuff is doing for us, because we've taken ourselves out of the process. And I think that's ultimately the purpose of AI currently, is that it's not really a tool. It's a replacement item. It's doing this thing for us. It's even on Midjourney's website. It's like, try typing in Mark Simonetti's name and see this wonderful art. It's not like, we'll show you how to paint like Mark Simonetti. It's like, we'll replace Mark Simonetti or whomever it is, or whatever artist their style is replicating. And not that you have to use it. I think we could find a way to use it as a tool. But I think at its heart, it's really not. It's just replacing, it's offloading. It's the forklift at a weightlifting competition that you can't really take pride in what you're creating with it. Is it impressive? Yes. Will it do amazing things? Yes, it will do them really fast. And I think most artists are really just afraid and impressed and scared of this thing. But all of that aside, I don't think it's a road I want to go down. I don't think it's a road any of us should go down. I think progress is not akin to evolution, that it's quite possibly, even though it's a staggering technology, it doesn't mean we're going to be better for it in the long run.
Everybody has valid points, especially when it comes to copyright issues, and especially when it comes to the million man hours it takes to create something. When it comes to the creative process, to me personally, I'm fascinated by AI, and I would love to see my artwork through this system, but through my hands, by my hand. And that's just me personally. And honestly, it seems like when it comes to this phenomenon, that the system is inspired by the creatives themselves, the artists themselves, the artwork themselves, because that's what you need to put into the system in order to really create these artworks, supposedly. And that being said, if artists are looking at this as a competition or a threat, then it's time for that artist to really step up their game when it comes to their creative process. And maybe it's a sign or a message that we need to evolve as artists ourselves. I'm not saying that we have to go down that path of AI, but even evolve as an artist, creatively speaking. To me, I look at it as it could be a challenge too, even though I felt like when this AI stuff started coming out, that I was creating AI before AI even existed, when it comes to the style of my artwork, because there seems to be a lot of relation, with technical skill and everything. So I don't look at it as a threat. I look at it as like, this is going to be fun, helping me advance my my artwork into something totally new, or to the next level of what it is, instead of being stagnant and thinking about like, okay, this is what my market is when it comes to the sale of my artwork or the sales of my artwork, and so I'm just going to stay here and just create this style. No, I'm going to create multiple upon multiple styles that will, either be embraced when it comes to this AI community, or I'm just gonna create the way I do. So AI is, like I said, it's not going anywhere. It's like a plague. It's a virus. It's out there. You know, it's inevitable. So it's either we learn how to accept it and have acceptance in our life and accept it. And if you're strong spiritually, you're not gonna let anything like this deter you away from your spirituality within. You know, if you have acceptance. So learning about acceptance is going to be key to an artist's survival. Trust me, I know. I've been involved in this for a long time and seen many things happen when it comes to art and artist careers, including my own. So acceptance is a good thing to learn. Just a bit of advice on that. But you know, everybody, like I said, everybody has valid points here when it comes to AI. I don't know about it being a god, but still, there are some powers to it that I think we should embrace, that we should accept. You know, that's just the truth. That's just how I'm feeling about it when it comes to AI.
Autumn?
Yeah, it's all really, really real and valid and intimate points. I agree that art is personal. And art comes in every shape and form. It's as unique as the artist. It's as unique as the perspective. And I hold the belief that what feeds art, what flows through us, is all from the same source, whatever cute name we want to give it. And it comes through in our own unique imprinting and channel. And so I would acquiesce and agree that you know, if you have a vision, even the beginnings of a vision, and you are creating that through using AI, then yeah, it's art. And people liken it to, you know, they say, oh, this is the same scenario. It's an echo of what happened when photography first came on the scene, and painters thought that art was dead. And then digital art came on the scene, and traditional media said art is dead. And so I keep myself in check, and I keep running this question and like really reevaluating and feeling into that concept of like, am I just afraid of progress? Am I afraid of change? Am I a Luddite? Am I a technophobe? Or is this just the next step in human evolution and creative evolution? And am I going to be left in the dust if I don't utilize it? All these questions are swirling. For me personally, in my own unique channel, my own unique perspective, I love the feel of a brush against the canvas. I cannot, I don't know, it's just like, the idea of not having that in my life and in my creative process, it's not an option for me. I just love it. And as the world moves more and more online and everything is just screen-based, I see it in my stepkids, just of like this, everything is on the screen, especially through the pandemic, work, school, social, education, working out. Like they think that they can't work out unless they watch a YouTube video. Like everything is screen-based. And personally, I'm trying, as the world moves more and more online, I'm trying to balance that and reduce my screen time, which is probably just ending up staying sort of at an equilibrium. But I'm really in like active resistance to that. So that's probably a big part of why I've never been curious about digital art. I use Photoshop as far as like event promotion and like poster making and like resizing images and stuff, but that's really the most of the extent of it. Sometimes I do a little bit of mocking up for reference photos, but it's really, for me, I really crave the tactile nature of art. And just, the option of stepping away from the screen. And I think as a culture, we know how addictive screens can be. And we see it in the youth. We see it in this, like the impulse to pick up our phone and just like, wow, I just spent an hour looking at nothing and filling my eyes with like image after image after image. And it is this consumptive, like many of you have said, it's like this, like constant intaking, and which speaks, I think it speaks to like a disconnect with, like, culturally, aside from AI and aside from even social media, just our impulse for intaking speaks to like a disconnect with ourselves, with our innate being, and with nature. So yeah, all of these, I think culturally we're also realizing that people are craving it more and more, these like digital detoxes and meditation. And how can we, as we use these tools and as we go down this route of more and more interface with technology, how can we balance that with feeling our feet on the earth and feeling the wind in our hair and connecting, like really connecting to the world, to the analog world around us. As a side note, I spent about 9 or 10 hours yesterday painting hair on a piece that I'm currently working on. You know, it's like methodical, meditative process, and of just refining and pushing and pulling and inching and like fixing things, and like, oh, oops, wrong color. Okay, dip it, and back and forth and back and forth. And like this process that's very rewarding. It's very subtle in the finished piece. Like that 10 hours is just like, it's gone now. I could have accomplished a lot of other things in that 10 hours. But when I look at that painting, I see that time. I see that the fruit of that time. And I sort of question myself in preparation of this conversation of like, okay, I don't actually know very much about AI. I don't actually know very much about this process of Midjourney or any of the other interfaces. But if I had the option, when all is said and done, with that 10 hours of, if I could just push a button or turn a dial or type a sentence, and that all that refining of that hair would be done for me, would I do it? Would I take it? Like, it was a slog. It's not super exciting, glamorous work. I'm not seeing big dramatic results. It's like a meditation, tedious carving. And my immediate impulse is no. And I like keep questioning myself, like, would you really? And I just keep coming back to like this like really grounded, rooted knowing that no, I wouldn't just push a button, because art is my ceremony. It is my medicine that I've been drinking my whole life. It is my meditation. It is my contemplation. It is my teacher that teaches me so much about how I show up and how I want to show up in the world. And if I'm to bypass that, like, where is my mind when I pick the wrong color or the wrong shade, or it's like tedious, or I like just spent 6 hours on something and now like it's wrong, or I change my mind, or I want to add something else or take something away. Like, where does my mind go? Where does my heart go? Where's my patience? Where's my self-talk? Where are my old stories? And if I bypass that, it's like, you can either do Vipassana and sit in 10 hours of meditation a day for 10 days, or you get a t-shirt that says I did Vipassana. They're not really the same thing. And I know that that's like a very simplistic, trite metaphor, but like there's no bypassing that process. And it's interesting to hear, Evan, I've never actually heard of anybody spending 100 hours on one of these generated images. And so it's a fascinating new piece of information for me. It's like, okay, that's like, it is a creative process. And I know that any creative process, whether it's cooking, whether it's dancing, whether it's landscaping, any creative process, there is that self-talk. There is that process of like self-discovery and discovery of humanity and discovery of self-compassion and comparison and fear and demands and all of the like pressures that we put on ourselves in the creative process. All of that can come up and does come up. Like that's the one thing we can count on. And so I have no doubt that it comes up in the process of using AI. So thank you for that. And thank you for informing that to me of like that you can spend multiple hours. And, you know, I guess it would be likened to using a clone brush in digital art. It's like you can either paint all of those little tiny details individually and then highlight and shade and highlight and glaze and do all those things, or you can make a clone, paint it once and repeat it. And so
I'm gonna realize I'm gonna step in maybe more so now on to like make sure that I guess we're almost done with this second round, but we want to keep things tight so that we have more open discussion space. So Simon, you can go ahead.
You're muted, Simon.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, so Simon, wait, are you back? Okay, why don't Simon, you figure out what's going on and we'll move on to Michael.
Yeah. Well, I'm so tempted to go in so many different directions. I kind of want to answer the sort of like mythopoetic riff that I was on earlier about it becoming a god. Like it's not a god in the way that I'm saying it's like worth worshiping, but I mean, it's like we've created a new archetypal container and expression for intelligence that didn't exist before. And now we're in a place where we need to make sense of it all over again, like categorically, emotionally. Like a lot of people's emotions are tied up in this, and it makes sense because they've dedicated their life to like developing and sharpening and refining this skill. But I also think when a new novel category emerges, it's like we're like I was saying before, we see the output of it. So we're like, oh, it's art because it looks like art. And I'm not here to say whether the output is or isn't art, but I think when there's a new category, it's like we don't really fully understand what it is, because it's more than a tool, but it is a tool. It's intelligent, but it's not conscious. It looks like art, but it's not really art. So instead of continuing down that path really quickly, there's 5 major steps in what an AI algorithm like that, or it's not an algorithm, it's like a set of things. But there's 5 steps to this process. So the first step most people are familiar with is training. So whatever goes into it, right? Whatever data sets go into this thing. Then it goes through the deep learning process. And then after the deep learning process, there's this is the part that's the most mysterious, kind of like black box to me. There's this process that occurs called, latent space. So what it does is from all of this data that it's consumed and this learning that it's done, it doesn't go, if you say, make a piece of autumn sky art or whatever, it doesn't look at your art. What it does is it looks at a mathematical data set that it has marked as like, okay, this fits within the boundaries of this concept. And then it iterates something totally new off of it. So if I tell it to do the same thing 10 times, you'll get 10 different iterations on the exact same ask. And that's how it does it. It like continuously creates new mathematical offshoots, fractals of the same latent conceptual dimensional space. And incidental side note is you can ask it to show you how it perceives the world. And it's like this crazy multi-dimensional like geometry. It's super crazy. So the way that it is referencing data and creating new iterations, it does bring up really interesting questions, of course, about plagiarism and who owns it. But it's like, it's almost like you're saying, hey, library, find me this, but do it in a totally new way. So it's like it's going to an existing set that it has, but it's creating something totally new. So it's like, you know, I don't know. Again, problem of a new category. Like, is this plagiarism? Is this just technology that is iterating? Like, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not a lawyer, but yeah. So then from there, the last two steps I didn't mention after this latent space is just it's the generation and the output. So the really interesting one is what's going on in this latent space of math, of like mathematical iteration. And that's, I don't know enough of the technicals to know if it's truly understood, but my understanding is that it's actually not truly understood. And this all started when engineers who were, you know, they were essentially just training AI to recognize images. Like, what is this? It's a human face. What is this? It's a banana. What is this? It's a car. And then they thought to themselves, okay, so it knows what a face is. It knows what a car is. It knows what a banana is. What if instead of identifying something, we ask it to create something? And then that's where this all started, is like a really low fidelity, really low pixel, banana-ish images according to AI art. And then it just kept getting better and better the more feedback it got. So I'll stop there, but I just felt like going a little bit down the technological explanatory rabbit hole since we haven't yet.
So we'll go Martina, Evan, and then finish up with Simon for this round.
Okay. Let's see. Great points, Michael. I appreciated your breaking it down for us. A couple of things jumped at me when you said that the system is generating entirely new images. Well, if this was so, why do I recognize in some images that are generated by artists the work of Peter Moorbacher, while it wasn't him who created it, Chris Foss, while he didn't create it, Oliver Vernon, while this was somebody else who created, a world that looks just like his. This is where I'm having a problem with the system, because it's kind of like, I think I was actually the one in an interview a long time ago who suggested to young artists to copy the masters. And what I meant by that was like, get inspired. Nobody cares if you go to a museum and you sit in front of a masterpiece and you try to experience the line work of Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, this is like a wonderful way to train yourself. But what I didn't mean was like create imagery that basically was created by somebody else, and now all of a sudden you're producing something and it looks like your friend's work, and where I find that kind of disturbing. And let's see, there was something else. Another thing that I find very important to mention is that we as artists shift consciousness by way of producing these images. Anybody who sees our image will be affected by it and influenced by it. And by creating AI images, we create something that, to me, it doesn't feel human. It doesn't look human-made. It feels artificial. It feels even a little soulless. Forgive me, Evan. I don't mean to really hail on anybody's parade, because I'm just trying to, express what I feel. At this point, I find it's very smooth. It looks very mechanical to me. Yes, it's breathtaking sometimes. It can be utterly beautiful, but I guess for me, it's a personal choice. I mean, this is at the end of the day, we can decide whether we want to create, and I don't say it's not a creation when you use AI, but we have the choice to use equipment other than our own devices to create something, or we can just create just by virtue of creating through ourselves and through the techniques that we develop. And I love the same thing that Autumn likes. I do enjoy the meditative process and touching the canvas and pushing the paint around and the dialogue that happens. Now, Evan pointed out that he has the dialogue going on at the same time. So of course, we shouldn't overlook that. But I see that the very young ones have already changed their image, their self-image by virtue of what they see. So I just recently heard that the plastic surgery has increased over the last couple of years by 50%. And this is not people over the age of 50 who want to erase lines in their faces or whatever, or these are 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds, and they have augmentations to their system based on wanting to look like their favorite cartoon characters or superheroes or what have you. So same thing with AI. We're creating a desire, an aesthetic, a desire for an aesthetic that we don't have in nature, in our everyday reality. Is that good? Is that bad? It just is something else. But we are creating desires, and we maybe have to be very careful of how we advertise these things. And I'm not, there's so many different directions that we could go into. But one thing that I really find important too is how
Martina, can we just save that for the next round? Sorry, I'm trying to be more part of me authoritarian to get the single
Very
thoughts
good.
out.
I'll keep the point.
Evan.
Cool. I want to just address a little bit of the mechanics. It's funny that you mentioned Peter Moorbacher, because Peter Moorbacher is a very heavy user of AI and has actually curated an art show with AI-specific artists.
I know. That's why I mentioned him.
So Peter Moorbacher's art doesn't have to be in the data set for someone to create art that looks like Peter Moorbacher. The AI does not copy anything from an image. What it is the latent space is like a holographic concept. So when you're in a deep psychedelic state, you can approach a concept and you can see all the iterations and the way it connects through a multidimensional lattice of meaning. That's what latent space is. So if I wanted to create something like Peter Moorbacher, I could specifically describe the quality of light, describe the character. I could say I want flowing silk robes above a floating angelic entity with elongated limbs, etc. So the fact that in its baby stages, lots of people are using Dan's name, they're using, Peter's name, they're emulating artists that they love. They're creating images based on what inspires them, just like a new painter would try to emulate the painters that they love. But at some point, if they are an artist and they want to create personal art, they will evolve past copying other things that have been done. And I'm in no way meaning to downplay traditional artists' concern about the art being in the data set, but I want to make it clear that even if all traditional art that's ever been painted was removed from the data set, we can still create those images with AI. I can refer to the qualities, the textures. Where it becomes a tool is that if I'm working on a piece, let's say I'm working with underworld energies in my process, and I want to create a piece about Persephone, I could specifically look for things that are not capable any other way, like show me the macrocellular structure of pomegranate skin. I want you to texture her garment in this particular cell structure. So then it becomes a tool for me to create things that are actually inspired by nature, but can't be done any other way. I don't have the tools here to go, see macrocellular structures. So I want to at least push people that don't understand the technology to be open to the idea that once people are done copying things that move them, there will be a movement of people that are able to create things that have not been seen before. And that's where it's most interesting to me, is that this tool set has the sum repository of all human visual content that has ever been digitized. And because of that, I can imagine things that have never been done before, that have not been seen before. And as I mentioned, my process is organic. It is inspired by nature. I'll go work with my succulents for a couple hours and be impressed by these L systems and these evolving geometries, and go in and make work. And I'm able to find things and find specifics of the like micro elements, as above, so below, of these actual organic forms that I'm in communication with in my yard and then inspired by to make art pieces from. So like, I do believe there'll be a moment when people are tired of copying their face in the style of Alex Gray or whatever Lexica does, which I personally don't think is art. I'm sure, you know, I can't be I'll leave that one. I don't want to say anything is not art. The other thing I wanted to just speak to is, I don't think anybody that's using these tools is minimizing. I'll make it very quick. I don't think anybody that's using these tools is minimizing the value of traditional media. Autumn was saying, like, you know, I could push a button and get this texture of hair, but I don't, because my meditation, my art is painting it. So my question is, isn't a photographer pushing a button to get a texture of hair their art and their process, and they have their own experience of planning that shot out and going through those photographs? Like, yes, there are ethical implications, but why is it so hard for people to see that these tools can also be integrated as part of a personal and spiritual process of engaging with the world around them and engaging with inspiration?
Simon?
Yes. Wow. Oh my God. I can feel our collective mind expanding. So beautiful. Everyone's thoughts. There's so much to say. And I really appreciate Evan specifically being more technically versed in this, being able to describe your process. And I value the way you're describing intention. So I want to speak a bit to intention and our connection to nature. And because the process of creating art has, excuse me, a lot to do with intention. And I think that you're probably a bit more of an exception, actually, Evan. It's so incredible what you're doing to merge it with the metaphysical realm. I feel like that's all great. And I think we should be aware of also things like, also to piggyback on what Martina and Skye were saying about Martina talking about plastic surgery, Skye talking about nature. So I paint a lot of nature, and I feel like part of my purpose is to describe our connection to nature and appreciate our connection to nature. And I'm an avid gardener, and I keep expanding my food garden every year. And I feel like we're sort of losing, as humanity, we're losing our connection to nature, and everything's becoming more synthetic food. And they're making synthetic food. People are, there's a movement to become transhumans. So again, in the bigger picture, it's like, what is the intention of people using it? And that's always the case with all kinds of art. And then also the creators of these technologies. So for example, I got an email from one of the companies saying, hey, we're changing our pricing structure. Anyway, I said, hey, I'd be more interested in using this if I knew more about how you were creating the data sets and if you were allowing artists to opt in specifically, because I also have concerns around that. And I hear Evan saying, like, yeah, you can train it. And I've actually experimented with using my own art to make generations of, and it's quite fascinating. But the response I got back from this company was, well, you don't own your visions. Do you claim to own your visions, your spiritual visions? And you put your art on the internet, so it's up for grabs. And I see that argument a lot also, like, well, it's on the internet, so it's up for grabs. And sorry if this is, I'm trying to make one coherent point here, but it's like, it comes down to how I really think about like, what are we going to teach the children? Okay. So if there's adults being like, it's all up for grabs and you can be anything you want to be, and it's okay to become a cyborg, but cyborgs don't exist without nature. Everything technological comes from nature. And if we forget ourselves and what it means to be human, and we keep offloading things to machines, then we are going to lose ourselves into some abstract thing, and we're running out of resources to even create the technology to be able to use to make these visions in our rush for this novelty. So if the intentions of the creators of this technology are like, well, it's all up for grabs, but we're going to make money from it, and you have all these artists saying, well, we'd prefer to be able to just opt in, but they're not creating the process for artists to just opt in. What does that say? It kind of just looks like a lot of other capitalism and authoritarianism and the whole mentality of like adapt or die. You know, you're going to have to become a cyborg to live in this world of cybernetic technology. So I know that kind of went all over the place a little bit, but I just really think whatever we do, we have to continually bring intention to it and think about what this means for the children, and offloading things to machines, that so we don't just get too lost in this technological realm. We have to remember nature and remember what it means to be human. Maybe, or I'll also add a little caveat to that, is like, of course, a lot of people say, well, we're meant to become cyborgs, and there's this spiritual singularity where that's when, you know, we become the next version of the fractal, or the fractal repeats, and we don't even know what it means that we're entering into right now because it's so abstract and we barely know what it even means to be human. So we're just in this fascinating space of trying to understand that, and this is another technology for exploring that.
Okay, we're going to go into the discussion round. I'm going to save my comments to create some space for that, and I'll also conscientiously have our closing round be like lightning speed, so we could be in discussion for a little bit longer. I'll also add a new process note, which I hadn't considered doing before, which is that while giving each other the space to share and open up, if any of us start to feel like one person or another might be going on, like they get lost in what they're saying, which is totally normal, we'll just like put a hand up like this, and then eventually that'll cue, and then the thought can be completed. So now here we are in the open discussion space. We can share ideas in no particular order, and we can respond to each other, etc. And we can also bring up what's not being said. So here we are.
I think I'd like to respond to you, Evan. I want to be very clear that personally, I don't feel that there is any danger by AI to traditional art, because what I've been feeling it has done for me, this whole progression, is it's just inspired me to dive deeper into my process and to produce images that are even more authentically my own and more powerful. So it's it's something that it's kind of like a race. You know, you get inspired by the one who's running maybe faster for a while there than you, and you say, hey, that's pretty amazing what I see, referring to AI, and so it's it's encouraging me to be a better artist. I respect what you say, really, truly, honestly, that you are immersed in the creative process by using these systems. What I would like to see for the public is that when we create using certain technologies, that we are very clear when we post them and share them about what they are. And I'm having a real problem with people saying, oh, look, this is my new art. This is my new painting. I've done this series and I'm really excited. My creative process is exploding. This might be so, but it's not really fair to and truthful, fair, leaving fairness out of the game. It's not really truthful to the public, because there's a slew of people who see these images and they believe that they were painted by hand, drawn by hand. And we should just be really, really honest and clean about, we should just be really out up front and say, this is done this in this way. And yes, I think fairness needs to be involved here.
Martina, do you think it matters? Do you think that matters to someone's enjoyment, that they have to know how it's made?
No, well, okay, good question. Thank you. Well, maybe it matters to me. Thank you. Yes. So it matters to me. You're right. Thank you for pointing that out, Dan. Very valid point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does matter to me that that something is described as a painting, or that, this is my show. I'm pointing this out, and it wasn't really created by hand. It's created by something in a different way. So, yeah.
I want to speak to that because you specifically have publicly stated that people using AI art cannot claim to be artists, that all they do is generate image and their work is not art, which definitely felt very personal as an attack to me. I do have an art show coming up with works that were created with AI, and there's quite a bit of painting in Procreate and additional work I do by hand in them. So basically, you've just stated that I need to put a disclaimer on my work to disvalidate it as something made by hand for my own expression as an artist, because it's not the way that you use your hands to express yourself as an artist.
So I don't think I've actually said that. What I have said is that can you just repeat what you said?
You made a post saying that anything created with AI is not art. It is just images, created images.
No, I didn't say that. I said the machines generate images. They're not. Yeah, I said they generate images. That's what I said.
But I create my work.
I did not say it was not art. I never made a claim like that.
I will find the post. You said specifically that it's only image generation. It's not art.
Okay.
And as someone who's been friends with you for 20 years, who is about to have my first solo show, I definitely feel that I need to respond to that. And I don't think I need to make a disclaimer, because sometimes I use original photography that's integrated with AI textures that I've hand painted light and shadows in Procreate and Photoshop. Maybe I've composited 40, maybe I've composited 400 renders together into my final image. Absolutely, the machine was involved, but I'm a classically trained pianist. Sometimes I use my hands organically. I'm also famous for my electronic music, where I use machines that are running off algorithms to create sounds. So do I need to say that this is real music? This is not real music. My fans don't care. Does it touch them in their heart? Are they moved to a new state of being? Do they have a deeper connection with something in the world because I shared a vision that was important to me and it connected with them?
I'd love to just invite a breath for a moment.
Yeah.
I just love how alive what we are touching is right now, because we are going into some really vulnerable and important spaces. Art, creation, our processes are all very important things to us. And want to just take a breath for a second, acknowledging and appreciating everyone's perspective, and then also recognizing that we're in it now.
I do want to caveat that I absolutely love and adore you, Martina, and I know that you would never intentionally put anything out that is meant to hurt or degrade anybody. I just in this container that we have, this is the place for people that have known each other 20 years to go, great, let's open this up. Let's look at how this is impacting people. And I'm asking questions. I don't know. Maybe the consensus is that anything created with AI, the ethical way going forward is to put a disclaimer. But I can tell you personally that I have had death threats and I have constant daily attacks on everything I put out about I am from soulless to an imposter to literally the harbinger of the apocalypse because I dare to use AI to express myself. So there is a repercussion, and some artists are minimizing talking about how they use tools to create personal work because of how vitriolic and personal and doxing, especially women that are doing it, is very rough anytime I post something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Simon.
Sorry.
I excuse me, sorry, just to that note, I guess I'll just ask, what are you going to put on the tags at your art show for the medium? Because usually in art shows, you put like the title and then the medium. I, for years, have been putting digital painting. Android, for a while, was trying to talk about digital painting as electromineralism, which didn't really catch on, but I appreciated his thought around that. And I appreciate what you're saying and what you do. So just, what are you going to put on the art tags?
So the first show this weekend at Keep Contemporary in Santa Fe, the gallery owner has artists that are using pure AI, artists that are using Procreate, artists that have a mixed technique. He listed all of those as digital illustration. For my solo show, I'm actually speaking and offering a workshop before the show about how artists can incorporate these tools into concepting or training on their own data sets. So I will list, mixed technique, neural machine learning, AI, original photography, digital painting, whatever that particular piece involved. I will be listing all of those tools. But I mean, I don't type words into Midjourney and come up with an image. I have custom models that I've trained. Every piece has some Midjourney, some Dolly, some stable diffusion, some custom models, some original photography. Like, it's all just a mishmash of what palette is necessary to create the piece I want to create. So for that particular show, every piece will list what models were used, I guess.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
That's what I was hoping for. That's what I was. I mean, this is something, but I've seen a lot of art that is being put out there that does not really say what it is, and then I see the response of people looking at these images, and many will say, "Oh, I didn't even know it was created with such tools."
Was their enjoyment of the piece changed if they found out that it was computer versus hand?
Well, I'm gonna step in so that this doesn't become necessarily primarily a back and forth between Evan and Martina. As juicy as this is, I want to recognize like the larger ecology of minds that we have here. Michael, you seem excited that you want to bring something in.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I find so fascinating about this is anytime there's some emergent form of novelty, and you saw this happen with NFTs as well, they become an enormous platform for shadow projection. And people who feel somehow personally threatened by it start to attack it as if it's like a threat to their very humanity or soul. But what I think is interesting is that the one thing that this will never diminish whatsoever is that the soul and this creative process that we're all talking about is uniquely human. And it really doesn't matter how you explore that thing and how you connect to that thing. It's that you do go through it. And if you do use these tools to bypass that process, which is clearly an option, like, everyone's talking about, I can just go to Midjourney and make some amazing looking shit, and it's only going to get better. So that ship has sailed. That's there. You can do that. Or you can use it for deeper processes. I mean, dude, I'm really interested, Evan, in how you're exploring this, because it totally makes sense. Like there is like an almost oracle-like quality happening in that latent space that you can play with in a really interesting
Hermes
way. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you got the right here, baby.
Yeah. Out in the corner behind me. We'll touch you afterwards.
Yeah, man. Let's connect. But yeah, I think that. But I do think that whoever was honing in on the really like passionately speaking about the danger of the atrophy of the human experience of creation being at stake. In a way, it absolutely is, but I don't think it's at stake because of this technology. I just think it's at stake in general because we have all of these vapid digital golems trying to tickle our dopamine at all times. And when you're living in a world like that, the like subtle call from the inside to deal with all of the personal wriggles and calls to explore the deeper, messier parts of yourself get buried by all the shiny shit, right? So yeah, I do think that is a danger that we all have to personally confront, and that, Simon talking about the kids and everything, that we do have to somehow encourage younger people to value that and not lose touch with it. I think we've already lost touch with it. I think largely, I mean, Jung was writing about this 100 years ago, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. Like, the fact that we're all just we're just on this rat race hamster wheel, and that's the new religion. And in the wake of not having a God anymore, we're all just like wondering what the fuck is going on and what to do about it. And usually that manifests in some kind of midlife crisis. But I think it's only becoming a more prominent problem now, and that everybody, like, maybe that's what needs to come out of this is a return to looking inward, to being introspective, to developing a relationship with the deeper parts of your psyche through whatever means resonate with the individual.
Yeah, I concur. Can I just add a little bit to that?
And then I noticed Autumn's been excited.
Go ahead.
So I'll let you two figure that out.
Simon.
Okay. Well, I just think, like, on a positive note, like, we can curiously look towards what Evan's doing and see that, okay, like, we are spiritual beings connected to what some might call the Akashic records. The information is everywhere and we're pulling it in, and whatever our biology is, we're tuning into information that exists in dreams and in physical reality, and we're expressing it. And to be able to use this as a tool to, like, further understand that is pretty extraordinary. And I think teaching kids to use it as a tool for that, like, hey, let's get more in tune with your dreams. Like, let's extrapolate your dreams and get more into the process of, because dreams, I bet most people here have, like, explored their dreams and dream work and what that means in their waking life. And that's also something that I do think we've lost touch with, that people in the past may have had more connection to, and that could go in line with even our psychic abilities and whatnot. So perhaps a lot of this technology has to do with retraining ourselves and becoming aware of this bigger picture and these metaphysical concepts, and that maybe people will get tired of using some of these things because it's just this oversaturation, overconsumption, and it's just this another phase of training, another version of what we already know we are. So I think there's all that kind of potential for this.
Yeah, I just want to touch back into the ethics around just being clear around the medium. And I really appreciate, Evan, that you're listing that and creating education around it. I think that's so valuable for people to see the work that is dedicated and the vision. And it's besides just being forthcoming about how the work is created, it's also really interesting for people. Like, I love to look through art books and look at the medium and wow, that's actually oil painted. I would have guessed that it was digital, or vice versa. Like, these pieces are incredibly unique through the artist. But the technique is so diverse. And I've experienced at a number of shows, hanging with other artists, that sometimes, like, if it's an overseas show, we're all hanging canvas giclées, and it's not always listed on the tag that a piece is digital, or if it's painted in acrylic or painted in oil, or now it will be using AI. And I do find that hanging traditional media of acrylic or oil or watercolor printed on a canvas next to a digital painting can really overshadow that traditional media, because there's just no way, without, like, thousands of hours into a painting, there's no way to replicate the, like, seemingly infinite geometry and glow and fractals and perfection that's available in digital art. And so I think that it's part of the education of the masses, because if you've never explored art making, you don't know the difference. You look at something, you say, that's amazing. And it might make you feel a certain way, this way or that way, but it's like you respond to intricacy and to imagery and to composition, and to really know how it's made is part of the enjoyment. I do think that it's part of the enjoyment. If I look at an intricate painting and I see that it's oil painted, like, my experience of it is shifted. And like, I remember I went to a very, very professional, beautiful, fancy gallery on Maui one time, and it had this big oil painting of an artist that I very much respect and admire. And because I know what I'm looking at, because I'm familiar with giclée prints and with the tools that are available at this time in technology to artists and humanity, I could see very clearly that was a giclée print of a photograph that the artist had painted in oil on top of. And on the tag, it just said oil painting. But there was actually areas that I can see, like I can see the pixels. I can see that what it is. And I asked the gallery owner about it, like just sort of innocently, like, oh, tell me more about this piece. And he denied it up and down, that would be anything other than an oil painting and worth the $56,000 that it was labeled at. So to me, that's another piece of the ethics. It's sort of a different avenue of the ethics, but it's also education and just being forthcoming. It's how does the weight of that sit on your conscience, and how can we operate in the most authentic and graceful way in this world?
Thank you, Autumn, for actually following through with the point I began to make, and I could never finish it. This is really why I asked about the clear definition of how we create these pieces when we exhibit them in public. I think we owe that to the public. And in all fairness, it's fair for the public to know what they're looking at. And it's also fair to the artists who are exhibiting, who are doing who are going maybe the analog route.
This is, firstly, I'm noticing I haven't heard much from Dan or Chor. And I'm going to put that in the space, and I want to make a comment.
With some popcorn, listening to this whole thing. Yep.
And this is a bit of a shift from the discussion of professional artists about the impact, as I'm not a professional visual artist. As I wonder about in myself, but also seeing my nephews, this sort of loss of creativity as it's being dominated by the excessive and easy access of other people's creative output. So there's almost a consumption of others' creativity, and that sort of like over dominates and replaces the space within us that we might express our own creativity. This is, I think, nested in a larger concern that has been spoken to about like screen media and where we're going with digital technologies. And I've even seen in myself the sort of addictive gambling of like another prompt, like what's going to happen. But what I want to point to here that I find is interesting is a wondering, and not a statement necessarily, but a true curiosity about whether or not the sort of massive uptick of people who otherwise would just be consuming content, wanting to go in and generate this new art as a sort of like, as this weird sort of expression, a weird sort of a revealing of how much hunger people have to be involved in a creative process without a context, a sort of like socio-cultural, relational, or even a temporal, substrate for an exploration of that creativity to come out, and being able to AI generate your own avatar, selfie, is this sort of like this weird way in which a little bit of that is being accessed. We're getting to touch on that, I'm being creative, without ever having to leave the sphere of content consumption.
I think it scratches that same itch, right? Like, I feel like if I scroll through Instagram too long, I don't feel like drawing anymore because somebody already drew this awesome thing that I got to enjoy, and there's less need for me to create something to see it. Sorry if I've been quiet. I've been kind of listening. I could talk on all of this all day, all of your guys' points. Like, Michael, is this the next step of evolution? Evan, I feel like there's no rules in art and use everything. And Martina, like the ethics involved in this, because the database is essentially stolen that we're building this off from. There's so many implications of it that it's awe-inspiring to me, and it's scary. But ultimately, I think it's the way we choose to use it. And this idea that this is inevitable, I don't think is true. That everybody says this, like, it's inevitable, better get on board or you're going to drown. But no, you could just choose not to use it. We could all collectively say, there's no good of this, and just decide not to use it. But I don't think that's the case. Like you were saying, James, I think it's not going to be at least in my industry, I'm seeing some things already change with it. And sci-fi fantasy, much like visionary arts, I think tends to be very progressive and implement. They were the first people to really adopt digital art, a lot like visionary artists like Andrea Jones and stuff. I see enough pushback in my industry that I don't think it's going to be art directors that make this a thing. And I see enough pushback with artists who just enjoy their process that I don't think it's going to be them who makes that a thing. I think it's going to be the average schmo who just, it's like scrolling through Instagram. It's like, I could just make art. I can make this thing now that I want. And that's what's really going to kick up the prevalence of it. And I think we're just going to see so much more content that's AI created and maybe less art. And hopefully it puts more impetus and importance on art creating. Like the fact that this is like, I buy human. Like I'm proud to say my company hires only humans, or the same way some people eat organic or whatever, that we just are choosing what's going to nourish us as a culture. I think my biggest fear is that I don't think it's nourishing. And I think all of Evan's arguments are really valid, that it's an incredible tool, but I think it muddies things, that even the database, it's really important when you train a database that it doesn't train on itself. It doesn't train on AI art. You need constant new stuff, because all it can really kind of do is create an amalgam of things. And maybe it's a new variation or a new remix of this thing, but it's taking all of this kind of collective unconscious and pushing it into this new art form. If it starts feeding on the AI content it's creating as well, it eventually levels off. It creates this feedback loop and it'll stop growing. So it's contingent on artists continually, progressively. If you want AI to make better art, it really is truly contingent on artists continuing to make better art that then inspire that program and then hopefully inspire us in return. I think it's the watering down of it all, though, that really strikes fear in me, is that it's just, it's even in your, if you're implementing it into your work, I think it's no longer your voice. It's the voice of everyone. It's the voice of training. It's the voice of math. It's the voice of like, it's the computer, like making these decisions for you, and you become an editor rather than a creator with a lot of it, I think, for me, I've just abstained from it entirely for that purpose.
Can I say something controversial?
Yes, please.
What if we're just editors in general? You know, I think in a way, like there's definitely like an exponentially different level of editing happening when you have infinity images that you can create and choose and edit. But also we're all having our own collective experience and internalizing that data and then explicating our own weird, unique version of it. And in a way that kind of is also editing the collective unconscious.
It is.
Iteratively, though. It's iterative. But it's iterative. So it's also, I don't know. It's just,
I think true innovation has to come out of something. Like something truly, truly innovative isn't just an editing or remixing process. And I think that's the thing AI can't really do that we can. So hopefully we're more than just editors ourselves, but maybe not.
Yeah.
AI cannot create art without human input, though. Like, is not my crazy dream after ceremony like a new thing filtered through the experience of whatever it is that this bundle of cells and experiences that makes me? Like, just AI would never come up with the image that I am creating out of it, because it is this vision that came through me that I'm seeking.
But that's not true, because you're training the AI right now. Like if you look at the AI chat system, you know, like someone, I feel like, and sorry, I mean, I don't know entirely, but what I'm saying is like, it's like artists are training the systems to eventually run on their own. Like they will and can. And I think there are plenty of algorithms that do run on their own. And right now it's like, artists like you and anyone using it is training the AI to get better at. Then the AI is going to understand the prompts, and they're going to be like, oh, this art got more likes or something. Like there's going to be some algorithm like people want to see more of that, and then this was liked. Oh, these prompts were used more. Oh, I'm going to use that. So you know, we're actually training the AI, and or it's a thing. It's not that it will never happen. It is happening.
Yeah, there's feedback. There's feedback mechanisms built in. So like if you use Chat GPT, you can say, yes, I like this response, or this is a good response, or whatever. Yeah.
I definitely agree with Dan about the sort of diluting and oversaturation that I'm experiencing, at least on Instagram, for example. If I go into to search for something in Instagram, you know how it gives you the suggestions. Now, when I do that and I go and I can look through the suggested images, I'm seeing probably 95% of them, because I follow a lot of artists, 95% of those images are AI. And when I click on them, if I'm curious, I see that they're relatively new accounts a lot of the time, with many, many followers. And like we've talked about, they're not being forthcoming about how that art is made. A lot of the time I'm seeing hashtags, many, many hashtags, and they're saying watercolor painting, oil painting, acrylic painting, traditional media, painting. Like it's listing all of the options for art. And I know that this is not the norm and there's exceptions to every rule, but it's what I'm seeing is like this oversaturation. And so, yeah, it gets like, as a professional artist who like pays my mortgage on my art, I do get a little squirmy around like, oh man, I hope I'm not rendered redundant or rendered invisible, because I rely on the being visible, at least to the audience that I've developed over the last 15, 20 years. And at the same time, I recognize that we all have to evolve and adapt and however that looks. So I'm remaining curious about, where is this going to guide and push traditional media and me personally. But I am seeing this like oversaturation and sort of like this numbing. Like they're like, oh, just another amazing image, like scroll, amazing.
I'm just going to step in that we technically have 5 minutes before this call is supposed to be done. We haven't done our closing round, and this is unfair of me as the host to let it go so close to the end time. So maybe we can get a round of hands. Would we like to go another 10 minutes and then do close, or do we close right now?
I can't actually. I have a hard out in 4 minutes. I have a client waiting for me.
Okay, let's close out then, because we could talk about this for a very long time. Obviously,
it's a heavy topic.
Right.
It's a heavy
Martina,
topic.
Yeah, you seem
excited. I just really like to say something personally to Evan, because he caught me on something that I felt I was really misunderstood with this statement. And for the record, if that's what I said, and if this is the exact wording, I was referring to the algorithm putting out creating images versus creating art. I was not referring to the creative process that you put into it or that some of the artists might put into this. And there's a big difference there. So I do not, and I know also that some people have not liked the fact that I did raise my voice around this issue. And one of the easy arguments has been like, well, basically, we're dinosaurs for wanting to keep things as they are. And I differ on that point.
Your voice is appreciated and valid, and I
love you, Evan. So there's no.
I love you too, Martina.
So we'll go into the closing round now. But Evan, since you do have to go, we'll let you start again. Let's all try to make it pretty concise, but we'll share our sort of concluding thought on this conversation that easily could go for another 10 years, as far as I can imagine. And Evan, we'll start with you since you have to leave.
I'll make it quick. There are no concerns that were raised that I don't also consider. I think like any disruptive technology, it has immense possibility for creative expression and immense possibility to further spiral culture into a weird, addictive, hyper-technological imprisonment of seeking after novelty. So I appreciate everybody sharing from their experience and look forward to how this conversation continues to evolve.
Thanks for your input, Evan.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
So Evan, sign out anytime. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Love you, Evan.
Nice to meet you, man.
Thanks for participating. Okay, so we'll go in our closing statements. Dan, Chor, Autumn, Michael, Martina, Simon, and then I will take the last word unless somebody wants to pass and then come along.
I'll pass since I just spoke, and you can come back to me.
All right, go ahead, Chor.
I think we just have to realize as superhero artists with the abilities to create on the level that we create, this is a gift that has been given to us, and it hasn't been given to everybody, even though everybody has the ability to create, and everybody is an artist in some way, shape, or form. So when things like this are created by man, to further education or to further creativity in some way, shape, or form, then it's just an opportunity and an option that's been put out there for non-creatives to learn how to create. However they do it is based off their own intentions and their own integrity when it comes to artwork and creating. So in reality, we as creators that live off of this, blood, sweat, years, and tears, have to realize that, and really embrace that, because not everybody's creative like how we are, or but they're creative in some way, shape, or form. Okay, if there's this module that can, or this system that can help somebody create, like, I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this AI thing, and he says, and I gave him my perspective, and he was like, "Oh, so this actually gives room for scumbag friggin' non-creatives like me to create some art." And I guess it is. I guess it is an opportunity for you, but in reality, it's going to be based off of the intentions behind the creator and the integrity behind the creator when it comes to what they are creating. So, everybody here had valid points from A to Z, and they're all beautiful. Honestly, I think that we should really embrace what lies ahead for us in the future. But we're still keeping our finger on the pulse of what is real when it comes to me personally. It is originality, when it comes to artwork, and when it comes to creating and seeing that's where my integrity and my perspective of artwork and what artwork truly is and where it really goes. So, but another artist may have another different perspective and another different truth, from what they've been taught or what they have learned. So, honestly, we just have to stay creative. We've been doing this since we were born. We're going to do it until the end of days, no matter how we do it. So that is my closing statement. And much love and thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Beautifully put. And I echo so much of what everyone has shared, and just really I'd say the biggest lesson that the creative process has taught me and art making has imbued in me is faith. Faith in the journey, faith in the process of creation and evolution and growth and healing and unfoldment. So regardless of where we are at now and all the fears and hopes and excitement and novelty around it, I've touched on a lot of that internal process for myself, and like these questions of like very real monetary survival and ethics and all of those things. It's like, regardless of all of that, those are all very little voices in my head, voices online, voices that are spiraling around, sort of like static. Really, what I feel is my most core experience in this whole journey and in the art making journey and the journey of life is this very grounded faith that we're right where we need to be and we're on our way to where we need to go. And I have no doubt that there's going to be challenges along the way. There might be, Terminator robots and all the things, like we have no idea. But I truly feel in my core and in my essence and in my spirit that love prevails and that we are on a grand trajectory of evolution. And we cannot even imagine the amoeba that was floating around in the ocean, or the primate that was banging rocks together, or whatever creation myth you want to put on our story. Like, those beginning phases could never have imagined. 300 years ago, they could never have imagined that you could carry around this little box that would give you every encyclopedia ever known to humanity and be able to connect you with any person around this earth. We didn't even know what the earth was. Like, we didn't even know what it looked like. So we don't even know what it would look like in another 10 years because things are speeding up, let alone 100 years. And I do hold faith that I'm where I need to be. I'm a small piece of the puzzle of creation, of God, of the universe experiencing itself and growing. And what comes through me and onto that canvas that's in front of me is also a part of that puzzle. So every image that is created by every person, just like every meal that is cooked for a family, every garden that is planted, every song that is written or danced to, every boat that's built, like everything is part. It's all this like tapestry of existence. And so here we are, just threads. And this is our group of threads having woven together for this conversation. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful little section of this infinite tapestry. And yeah, we can't even imagine if we were to zoom out what that tapestry would be. We'll never be able to perceive it in our human form. But I do trust that it's integral, every thread. And whether we understand it or condone it or agree with it, doesn't matter. If it comes through you and it makes you feel alive, then it is valid and it is vital. So I thank all of you for your words. Thank you, James, for having us and for inviting me here. And thank you for being those integral threads. Here we go.
Thank you.
Is it me or you next, Simon?
I think I'm last.
Okay. Is it me then?
Yep.
Sure. I'm gonna refresh one of my old riffs that I think if the Matrix is a reality, we're the ones willingly putting ourselves in the pods and hooking us up to all of the life, soul extracting goo and instruments. And this is yet another opportunity to be sucked in to another portal that might be another way to suck the soul from the body. But I think every iterative piece of totally captivating technological novelty that comes along and has come along has been an opportunity for that to happen, and has been yet another moment where each individual is forced to either proverbially red pill themselves or not, and I don't think it's as like binary as like you do it or you don't. I think it's, do you hold some kind of higher principle above being just abducted by novelty, and like I was talking about before, being totally just a victim of your own brain and your own addiction to endogenous dopamine. And it ain't going to stop getting weirder. Like, it's just going to get weirder and weirder. And if we take this progression to its nth degree, Dan, you were already kind of hinting at it. It's like, you can get whatever you want, it probably even before you know you want it. Like, you're probably going to be able to hook yourself up to something that's like running low on serotonin, and it will give you something that will boost your serotonin before you even notice you're low. So the bespoke world of just existing in whatever you want, in maximal comfort, maximal pleasure, maximal, catharsis of all of your carnal body, like, that's not going to go anywhere. That's going to be an option that we all have. And there either needs to be a decision on the part of the individual to live according to some kind of higher purpose, attached to some kind of higher meaning, or not. However you choose to exercise that, or however you choose to experience that, because Plato's cave is just going to keep getting cushier. It's just going to get more comfortable and more comfortable. and it's going to be more desirable to just stay there. And I think it's incumbent upon the individual to figure out what that means for them and what it would mean to them to make the flight from said cave. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you all. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Martina.
What's me? Okay, well, I guess that progress or new technology has not always been, as an end result, the thing that has advanced us. If that were true, then we would not be in this predicament that we are on the planet today. We wouldn't be facing all the problems that we're facing. Good example would be the Industrial Revolution. Whole industries of artisans were wiped out. Things that were beautifully crafted by hand. Nobody knows how to do these things anymore because machines took over and created products that lacked the artistry and the beauty of those products. Photography is a great example. Perhaps there was a fear in the day that photography would eclipse the portrait painters, and it has certainly democratized portraiture for the common people, or people who couldn't afford portraiture. Portraitures painted by artists, and they could just buy for a few cents a photograph. Great thing on the surface, but it also eclipsed academic painting and the skill that very few people have today to be able to portray like the ancient masters could. I can't. I haven't been trained. I can try. It's a dream of mine to be able to paint like a Michelangelo or Da Vinci. So with all of this said, I just hope and I trust, I have faith as well, Autumn. I have faith that our human evolution is one that will take us into a positive future, and that this technology will also advance us and help us in our creative process, and that it will open our eyes to new ways of expression. But I also hope that with this, we are going to remember deeply our humanity and what it means to be a creative human that has the capability to be just as amazing as any machine. And maybe we can do these things in conjunction with the machine. I hope so. If we can become partners with these technologies as we have in the past, and we will continue to do so. But always, for me, I'd like to see our humanity remember its humanity always, and not become a mutant form of what we could potentially become. And I really appreciate so much each and every one of you, and the brilliant points you brought up. I've learned a lot. I was put in my place with good reason, but it was misunderstanding. It also taught me about how things can be misunderstood that are being said, and how they can be misinterpreted. So and thank you so much, James, for this great opportunity, for bringing us together. So onward and forward, and I'm sure there's great things for us in our creative futures.
Thank you, Martina. Yeah. Yeah, well, for sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James. I think one of the main important things moving forward are to continually have discussions like this, and just notice the importance of them. It is not a waste of time to consider our intentions and to wonder about things and get more clarity. And that's kind of been my theme on this talk. And leveraging on what Michael was saying, I've shared that sentiment a lot with people, as I kind of feel like we're on a slippery slope to, we're the ones actually creating the pods, the matrix pods. Like, oh, I just want to be, life is hard, this world is hard, just put me in a soup of this amniotic fluid where I can just be fed images and endorphins to make me feel like I'm having an experience. So we just have to be really careful of that and learn discernment about our own feelings and drives. And I'm not against AI art. I'm going to explore it. And I encourage people to just simply follow their inspiration. But again, like a question, where is your inspiration coming from? Is it competition with other people you see online? Is it and then now is it competition with AI? Because if it's competition with AI and what you're seeing are these like impossible images, like detail and stuff, well, you're never going to get there unless you use it. And then there's this race to get there. And I feel, being that this is the Psychedelic Café, I just want to drop about psychedelics and plant medicines, is that they've always helped me hone in what my intentions are and really, really learn discernment about that, and especially a connection to nature. So the plant medicines and fungi have always taught me to like listen to nature more, slow down and pay attention, because there's so much there to learn and understand and ground into, and really appreciate the experience and beauty of life that is here. For example, my personal path with gardening, like I said before, is like the more I'm in the garden, the less I feel like my time is wasted. Whereas I can definitely say I feel like I have wasted a lot of time in front of screens, not necessarily in the creative process. I really enjoy that, but there's been a lot of wasted time in front of screens. And and I value the food more out of my garden. It feels more nourishing, like picking up that fresh asparagus. Like asparagus you get in the store tastes nothing like a fresh picked asparagus. And that's the same with many plants. And so that's our experience here, is to, I think with this technology and everything moving forward, like Martina said also, like we have plenty examples of technology that has gone awry, and we just went full steam ahead, not looking at it and not questioning it. And I've seen people making this argument online, like, just go down the water slide of AI. It's amazing, like just no friction involved. But I think anything we do is important to question our intentions. Just slow down, take a breath, and appreciate what we have. And so I appreciate everyone and everyone's thoughts here. It's just beautiful discussion to have. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Simon. I'd like to reiterate what Simon said, maybe for my closing comments, that this care about what we're doing with this thing, that I think AI potentially really is maybe one of the greatest achievements of our lifetimes, probably maybe ever. Like, I don't think any of us expected the internet to change the way we lived, and it really has, like, changed our entire lives. And this has the potential to do that. But of all the things that AI could be doing, it's like art wasn't the one I wanted it to do. It could be unlocking our genome or politics or resource allocation or all these things, but we're using it, for deep fakes and stuff like that. And I think the potential for horrible things to happen where we don't know what we're looking at anymore. We don't know if this was a real person saying this, or if this photo was a real place, or if this art was made by people or anything off a database that's already stolen. It's not off to a good start, I think. And because we're just using it to just do the thing we're doing, and it's that stay comfortable, stay full, like just eat. And we're not putting any thought into how are we going to regulate this? Do we put tags on there that claims this is AI so we can validate what's real or not? Can we opt out from feeding this thing? And we're not doing any of those things. We're just kind of just getting like steamrolled and then tossed into this pool, like, or you're going to drown, like just partake in it or not. I would hope that people would ask themselves if it's something we even want, even though we're capable of it.
Well, having the opportunity and the challenge to close out, I think for me, it kind of goes back to that sort of like shift that AI art at times being this weird sort of way in which we're trying to get a sense of having been creative while still being tuned into the easy, quick, like slot machine of content novelty. And that's not a problem with the technology. It has been spoken before. It's a problem that's emerging out of a larger problem, which is like, where are we right now as a species? And as much as this is obviously a very serious issue for people whose livelihoods are being, like negatively impacted and possibly jeopardized, it's interesting that we're arguing about, or like online, there's a lot of argument about AI art and whether it should be this or should be that. And like that conversation continues to sort of like trend over the climate crisis or like, these kinds of issues, which realistically are actually much more important or something like that. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of layers in which I could be strongly challenged on that point. So I'm not standing behind it like a concrete wall. I'm not on social media right now, so my opinion is not the 100% only valid one. But I do just wonder about that, and what the very fact that we're having this discussion means with respect to where are we as a species. Like this is just like another piece of the larger meta crisis that we're in a part of the process of, and this premise, this could be this transformative emergence, AI being a transformative emergence on kin to the emergence of the internet and how much that changed us as a species, and yet that's only just one smaller piece inside of this larger system that, as Martina had suggested, that it isn't necessarily going to turn out for our best, at least not at first. Fingers crossed we learn from whatever challenging lessons this presents us. But nonetheless, it's a rich and interesting conversation and a lot more nuanced than it seems like a lot of the opinions online, at least the social media dialogue, social media being its own problem, seem to suggest. So with that said, I want to thank all of you so much for bringing all that you brought to today's conversation, and going over with me, and my apologies and my gratitude there, and for the hopes that from here this conversation can inspire further conversation and in your lives and in the lives of the listeners. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, James.
Thank you.
Love everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Brother.
So much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
The cafe is
Bye.
closed. Okay, so that is this episode of Adventures Through the Mind, number 11 in our Psychedelic Café series, links to all of the artists that were here and the podcast host, Michael Phillip being a podcast host, links to all of their stuff is contained in the show notes of this episode at jameswjesso.com. If you're checking this out recently or like recent to its release, it'll be on the front page. Otherwise, you could just search Psychedelic Café or art and you'll probably find it very easily. The search index is pretty well established. And yeah, please do check out their art and follow up with their work. And if you enjoyed the show, please do consider financially contributing to the podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon or by leaving a one-time donation or buying something from the online shop, some of the digital content that I have created, audio lectures. I also have some books in physical and digital form. You could also buy some shirts and that kind of stuff. So please do check that out. Or you could leave a one-time donation. I might have already said that. But that's it. This has been this episode of Adventures Through the Mind. Thank you so much for tuning in all the way to the end. And until the next episode, take care.